How we doing, YouTube? I am one single itty-bitty humble gay man who wanted to take a moment and speak to the controversy or the tons of content on YouTube that are focused on Star Wars new show The Acolyte, some of their other original programming, and companies like them and others that are so obsessed with DEI that it's starting to impact the quality of the product. I thought that since I hadn't heard anybody done it, and maybe they have, and since I could be considered one of their targets as far as wanting to make me feel represented, wanting to make me feel included, wanting to make me feel like I had a place in the show with the company, with its products, and that they see me, they hear me, and they're cognizant that there should be storylines that cater to things that I can relate to. Why they don't think I can relate to just stories about the common human experience, I'll never know. But I thought this was a unique opportunity to just give my take. So if you're interested to hear what I have to say, purpose of this video is to weigh in on this obsession with DEI, why I think it's killing companies, why I think it's counterproductive, why I think it runs contrary to every common sense notion we have about entertainment and life in general. And before I do, I wanted to make sure that you understood this is the opinion. And when I say the gay speaks in the tile, that's one gay. I'm just one itsy-bitsy, well, not itsy-bitsy, but I'm just one humble gay man that is giving an opinion because I feel that I am one of those folks that DEI has been invented and propagated for, and I'm in a unique position to provide kind of a counter argument. So if that's something you're interested in hearing, stick around. If you like the video, hit the like button and absolutely leave a comment. And make sure to leave one if you agree, and make sure to leave one if you disagree. They should always be respectful, but I never chase confirmation bias. And I do want to make it known, and I'm just saying this in jest, I am not speaking on behalf of the LGBTQIA LMNOP square root times plus plus minus community. Keep in mind, one humble gay guy. The gays speak, but just one humble one of them. I have not watched The Acolyte, and I haven't watched really any of the Disney series on Disney Plus. I know the plots of these shows. I know what happens in these shows. I hear about the writing in these shows simply from watching YouTubers that are making me laugh so hard I cry. It's just how cringe-worthy, cringe-inducing, awkward, lame, pathetic, nonsensical these shows can get, how idiotic the storylines can be, and how these companies and these shows are sacrificing quality in writing, in plotting, in characterization on the altar of DEI. So again, if you're interested to hear what I want to say, without further ado, let's get into this video. So I did 5-10 minutes research on Wikipedia. I kind of wanted to get a feel for the entertainment industry and the history of representation in Hollywood and in the content coming from these companies. So I just have a handy dandy, notebook, made some notes. So let's just first, kind of look at some of the projects, some of the details, and some of the statistics, that make a case for an opportunity to kind of ratchet down the DEI or start questioning if it's accomplishing what it's meant to, if it's here for the right reasons. I'll let you be the judge. But I'd like to start, because I am part of the LGBTQIA plus plus minus square root of 2 community. I do want to start there. And I wanted to start with the 2000 to 2005 ensemble drama on Showtime called Queer as Folk, which was an adaptation of a British show with the same name. And this ran for 5 years, was Showtime's #1 or most highly rated to date original programming for its run on Showtime, and had an ensemble cast with the exception of, I think, 1 or 2 cast members that were gay in the show, and I think a good majority were actually gay men in real life, although that didn't matter. The story was just centered on a day, a week, a month in the life of these friends who happen to be gay, who didn't live in glamorous New York City, weren't, living it up in Los Angeles, were really getting by in the glitzy, glamorous atmosphere of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? Just everyday America. Have we forgotten about that show? I mean, it ran for 5 years. It had, probably 50 episodes. Entire cast was gay. Every relationship on it was basically gay. And actually, the stories weren't much different from hetero love stories and all the universal tropes that we've come to expect from love stories in real life and in fiction were present, but it was a significant show, a great show, and it ran 24 years ago for 5 seasons, was #1 rated, and I don't remember any complaints about quality. In fact, those I knew and myself at the time, I loved it. And I really enjoyed it, and I really appreciated that they didn't sensationalize the lifestyle and really just treated it as if they were following, a bunch of heterosexual friends navigate a life like Sex in the City and others like it. We also have Queer Eye for the Straight Guy that came out in 2003. That was 21 years ago, and just, keep me honest on the math. That had 100 episodes and was Bravo's biggest show and was an Emmy Award-winning show. And a show in which a straight white male was open to the idea of having gay men help him up his game and get the girl, and audiences couldn't get enough of it. Were we forgetting about that show? The creative concept, the fact that so many people enjoyed it, that it was popular for as long as it was, that it did so well for Bravo. I'll leave that for you to determine. In 1997, we had Ellen DeGeneres, who is gay and is also one of the most successful stand-up, not just female, but successful stand-up comics of all time, come out in an episode of her sitcom in 1997 as gay. It may have been the first gay kiss on a TV show, although I think that honor may belong to Roseanne. If it doesn't, so sorry, Ellen. If it does, well, then that just makes the case even more. But it bears asking ourselves why we need DEI so much when Ellen's show continued to run successfully for about a year and a season beyond her coming out. And that happened in 1997, which is almost 30 years ago. And I think one of the primary reasons the show ended is because she went on to become one of the most beloved, highly rated daytime talking head and talk show on TV. I know there's been some controversy around her, but she is funny. She did delight audiences, and people were very loyal to that show, loved that show. And for those that have the ability to watch it, it was daytime appointment television. I guess there's no representation there, right? I love the movie in 1994. I'm a Gen Xer. It's called Reality Bites. Ben Stiller wrote it. I believe he directed it. And it was about, the disaffected youth of Generation X and their struggles to, grow up and navigate romance and relationships. And there was a gay character among the 4 featured characters. And he was preparing to come out to his family. And he had the support of a group called PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. So the movie was very funny, and having Janine Garofalo, one of the roommates, role play with him on what he would say when coming out to his family. So you might remember, if you've seen it, I'm dating myself. This is 1994 now, so now we're talking 04, 14, we're definitely, 94, 04, 14, 24, 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, we had a main character in a feature film that Ben Stiller directed that had an entire scene, a very funny scene, with the character role-playing with Janine Garofalo and how he was going to tell his parents he was gay. Maybe there's no representation there. I see it. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments on that one, too. Let's talk about the African-American community and the role that Blacks have played in entertainment and how they've enriched entertainment for not just because of the latest round of shows focusing on DEIs. So next we're going to move on to the African American community. When I was doing my research, I came across The Cosby Show. So that was a show about a black family, and not just a black family, but not an upwardly mobile, if not wealthy, black family with a patriarch who was a pediatrician. They lived in a brownstone in New York. Yes, it was possible for blacks to live in a brownstone in New York. It was possible then. Maybe it's even more possible now. But that ran from 1984 to 1992. So we have 8 years, 201 episodes. TV Guide calls it the biggest hit of the 80s. And I distinctly remember having to debate, and I think they were on at the same time, how I was going to watch The Cosby Show and The Simpsons and the whole ratings battle behind that. I doubt that there's a way The Cosby Show could become as popular as it did if it wasn't universally beloved by all Americans, not just the black community. And I think it was a show that showed a day in the life of a black family without some of the tropes that have typically come with that. And it's beloved. And despite Bill Cosby's controversies and crimes, we're not going to go into that, I think it's still very much loved. By the way, I'm in my car filming this because I live in a loft type situation. The walls are very thin, wanted to be sensitive topic we're discussing. And for sound quality, I was going to turn the air off. Bro, it's about 135 degrees out here. I'm starting to look like John Belushi after a 2-hour set. I got to put the air on. I hope we can still hear each other. I'll try to speak up. Or you can still hear me. I'll try to speak up. So, sorry about that. It had to be done. Looking past The Cosby Show, have you ever seen In Living Color? So In Living Color was a sketch comedy show. Speaking of John Belushi, who was huge on Saturday Night Live, In Living Color was a sketch comedy show in which Jennifer Lopez got her start. She's in the Latin community as a fly girl, dancing, before after commercial breaks. They would have the fly girls perform. It was the launching pad for the career of Jim Carrey, probably the whitest white guy that ever was white, and Keenan Ivory Wayans, who was a black man who created, wrote, produced, I believe, the show, and also acted in the skits. I have to say, In Living Color skits were right up there with some of the best of SNL. You had Vera DeMilo, you had Homie Don't Play That. It was a fantastic show. And I actually thought it was just a great example of different people of different skin colors coming together to make us laugh our ass off with a really good show. Thought there was some African American black representation in there. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I don't know if you've ever seen 227. That was a sitcom. It was on NBC from 1985 to 1990. One of the highest rated sitcoms for its time slot. It had Jackie Harry in it. I don't know if you remember Sandra. Maybe. She was just that very snobbish, woman. I think she was the only single in the building. And it was a few black families that lived in an apartment building. And I believe it was New York City, and just made us laugh and giving us a peek into their everyday lives. Don't remember a lot of heavy, serious content, but the show just let the show be what it was, and people liked it. And it wasn't because it was an all-black cast, and it wasn't popular just because blacks were the only ones that watched it. This was a big show, and Jackie Harry, she's not up to much these days, but it launched a pretty successful career for her too. So, so far we had the most beloved sitcom of all time, one of the biggest hits based on TV Guide's assessment of the 80s, a show that showed black Americans or African Americans are upwardly mobile, as a sharp contrast to the other two amazingly huge hit shows, Good Times, which took the very real situation of African Americans living in these projects. They didn't sugarcoat it, but they also showed the joy that these characters still had, despite, struggling to make ends meet. And they were just as endearing as the Cosbys, right? Just as fun to watch, just as funny, just as tender, just as family oriented. And then we also had the Jeffersons. Regardless, whether it was the Jeffersons or the Good Times, the shows were funny, and they were reflecting realities of things that were happening in the country at that time. And I feel like, in looking at these shows, comparing them or putting them side to side, where what I started to see in this research is that great shows just share the human experience, and every human being has some of the same common experiences despite our differences. And the shows that have been really successful have been able to do that. those three and others notwithstanding. We also had Martin, one of the biggest funniest black stand-up comedians, who had a very successful 5-year sitcom, Martin, which was the most successful show on Fox, I believe, for most of its run, if not all of its run. And I know that me and my sister, we used to watch it in anticipation and just hope Shanae was in that episode because we just loved her. Martin would do different characters representing the people that lived in the building, and we loved the episodes without her, but we were just hoping she'd make that appearance in every show. Let me know if I'm missing, if this isn't representative. I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hit series that performed as top shows for the networks that they were on. That's what I call inclusion. That's what I call representation. And they did it telling the human experience in a way that we could all relate to. Imagine that. We also, in looking at the LGBTQ, we looked at Queer as Folk, the 5-year series about gay men living in Pittsburgh. Not splashy, not over the top. Didn't use stereotypes to reinforce what, people perceive gay to be. They were just human beings. They were men who were friends. They were also men who, crushing on other men and with the same struggles we all go through, gay or straight, and playing the game of love, right? But, maybe there wasn't the representation I'm perceiving there was in that either. Queer as Folk, where straight men were open to gay guys, helping them with self-improvement. Maybe that doesn't qualify as representation either. I really should look up the definition of representation, or my research is just bad. And then, of course, we had, Ellen coming out as gay in her sitcom in 1997. Just want to make a point of that. Moving on. Oh. I also wanted to talk about black in cinema. So I have not seen either one of these. I will concede that the black community is also responsible for giving us watershed, critically acclaimed movies that showed some of what the African American community, for better or worse, has really experienced in this country. And they're important movies, and that they should remind us of places as a country we should never and never will go back to again. In The Color Purple, and also Roots. And I really should. I think I will. I do think Oprah Winfrey was in The Color Purple. Just so happens that she was an upstart that came from nothing to becoming one of the most successful talk show hosts, interviewer next to Barbara Wawa, and all-around megastar in history. I mean, she lives in a mansion in Montecito that's just ridiculously big. I mean, it's like big for the sake of being big, and good on her. She earned it. And I remember white women, black women, Chinese women, Spanish women loving Oprah, especially the days she had her My Favorite Things and her giveaways. She didn't just have the support of one community or another. She was someone that could communicate effectively across cultures, across skin colors, across sexualities, because again, her interest was in the human experience and helping us realize our differences while also recognizing our commonalities. Beyond that, you have Whitney Houston, who's one of the largest or most popular and best-selling female pop artists in the world, in all of history. She had I Will Always Love You, her cover of Dolly Parton's song, as part of The Bodyguard. That was only #1 in America for what, like 17 years? That's an exaggeration. Who didn't love the moment when it went, but I will always love you? She sang it, briefly before she died on like the Good Morning America, and she needed some Chloroseptic, some Ludens. Her voice was shot. But she did sing that, and that song was magic. That song was magic, and it was beloved by everyone. Maybe not everyone. Maybe it grated on people. I did hear a couple in England who sued or took action against a neighbor that just wouldn't stop playing it. But then you also had Whitney's Star Spangled Banner, and what a moment for pop culture, and what a moment for even American history. I think for 3.5 minutes. First of all, it was the best rendition of the Star Spangled Banner that we've probably ever heard. I think it's universally agreed that it was just so damn moving that it's never going to be replaced. Certainly not by Roseanne's attempt to do it at a Mets game or at a Reds game. I can't remember where she did it, but Whitney transcended race. She really transcended all of our differences and sang her heart out to help us remember that for all our differences, we all share the common experience of living for one of the greatest countries in the world. And I think for those 3.5 minutes, every American that was watching, whether they were there or watching on TV, had hearts swelling with pride for the way that she sang that song and how she made that song sound and mean things to people that it really probably never meant anything to, and maybe up to that point deservedly so. So maybe African Americans haven't been represented appropriately enough to this point. Maybe my research is bad. You be the judge. So I lastly wanted to talk about Rotten Tomatoes. So Rotten Tomatoes used to be a site that we could trust to get aggregate reviews from both critics and viewers. I've almost always valued the critics more. I would read the viewer comments, but I think that was a time when really the viewer ratings and the critic ratings were a bit more aligned. Now I think it's we either have a high score on the side of the critics and the audience, in which case the critics, once again, are in lockstep with the everyday American. But as soon as there's a low audience score and a really high critic score, then everybody's just a racist, a bigot, and is review bombing. If that site does not respect the opinions of viewers when the viewers' opinions are not favorable, then that should be an argument for removing that metric or that comparison to the critics' reviews and their overall percentage. Otherwise, Rotten Tomatoes is only asking us to rate something and then valuing your assessment of the content as long as it syncs with what the critics are saying. Otherwise, there's just a problem and it has nothing to do with the content. Again, it just doesn't make any sense. Either you value the opinions of viewers, across TV shows, movies, or you don't. You just can't cherry pick when people hate a movie because it's just bad or when they're just racist, misogynist. It's ridiculous. I think it's a ridiculous argument, and I think it's a heinous argument, and I think it's one that is being lobbed without all the facts. I think there's some of that going on the other side as well, but I think we're just getting lost with this diversity, equity, and inclusion that's supposed to represent us, but all it does is really divide us. It's not bringing us closer together, and it's making us forget the very real history we have as the melting pot of America that has long produced content that has been beloved across everyone in this great nation and even the world, right? I've always heard the phrase, the only thing sure in life is death and taxes. Honestly, in America, I've actually believed only 4 things are assured: death, taxes, Coca-Cola, and Walt Disney. And I think it's crazy, not only for YouTubers, but even in the legacy media, where you see headlines about Disney in trouble. That's some scary stuff, and I think that's a rallying call for Bob Iger and whomever is responsible for their sorry lot to get in one room across their divisions and say, where did we go wrong? We are not producing content people like. We don't have blockbusters anymore. That is indicating to us that our biggest problem is not review bombing, it's crappy content. That's the message. And as long as they ignore it, as long as they don't hear it, and until they heed it, I don't see things changing. So there you have it. Just the opinion of one lowly little gay man, not the entire gay universe. I will say on the Acolyte, and this is really what cracks me up, we're all misogynists, racist, bigots. I'm gay and I'm homophobic, and Disney's big attempt or big play at including gay women in their series was to make them occult witches that performed rituals that made no sense and encourage children to lie on tests so that their force or threat or God-given gifts weren't recognized and fostered. I don't think that's, it may be representation, but it's not very good representation. Why do lesbians have to be indoctrinating witches? I think it's worth asking. So again, those are my 2 cents. Thanks for listening. I continue to look forward to all of the YouTube content about these and other shows and the culture wars. It's a shame that these videos on either side of the argument are more entertaining than the actual products themselves. And continued kudos for House of the Dragon for taking the lesson of Game of Thrones, incorporating or representing the African American community in a better way, but in a way that makes sense, adds meaning to their characters, adds meaning to the story, and still resulted in quality appointment television. Well done, Warner Discovery. That's it. I'm done. It's hot. I'm out of gas and I'm going in.